What's up, family? Hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications because we got something serious to talk about today. And I mean serious. You ever notice how the media runs the story and everyone focuses on what the story says, but nobody asks where the story came from? That's exactly what's happening right now with the Pentagon. There's a narrative being pushed across CNN, the Washington Post, Reuters, all these outlets telling you that America's military is running out of missiles, right? As you see on the screen, that our stockpiles are dangerously low, that our generals are so worried they're going around the chain of command to sound the alarm. And the media wants you to believe this is about Trump's decision. That's the story they're selling you. But here's the thing, family. The real story isn't about missile counts. The real story is about who leaked those numbers, who decided to take classified operational details and hand them to journalists at left wing news organizations to manufacture a crisis, because that's what happened. And if you're not asking that question, you're missing the entire point. So let's break this down, look at the different perspectives, and then I'll give you my thoughts. So we're going to talk about who allegedly leaked, what they leaked, and why leaking classified information to sabotage an elected president is dangerous no matter which party you vote for. Now, here's what we know based on the reports that have been circling around since around July 20th of this year, 2026. According to multiple news outlets citing anonymous military sources, the United States has significantly depleted its stockpile of THAAD and Patriot missile interceptors. All right. That's what's being told. And that's the whole thing, you know, snooping around in regards of that being said. These are the systems when it comes to THAAD and Patriot missile interceptors. For those who don't know, these are the systems that protect American troops, American allies, and honestly, the American homeland from incoming missile attacks. As you see on the screen, CNN ran with a report claiming that nearly 80% of THAAD interceptors have been used and about half of the Patriot missiles are gone, all during operations related to the Iran conflict. They cited senior military commanders as their sources. The Pentagon's own Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, I'd like to bring up on the screen, got in front of cameras and publicly disputed that number, called it false, said the reporting was inaccurate. But here's the question nobody in the media is asking: who gave CNN that number in the first place? Because that number didn't come out of thin air. That came from someone inside the Pentagon with access to classified readiness data, someone who decided that the American people needed to see that information through a CNN lens rather than through the proper chain of command. And it gets deeper. There's a report about General Alexis Grankovich, if you guys don't know, here on the screen, who is a top NATO and U.S. allied commander stationed in Europe. According to what's been leaked to the press, General Grinkovich sent a written notification to senior Pentagon officials. In that notification, he reportedly said he would be forced to make an impossible choice. He'll have to decide between defending the U.S. homeland and defending Israel unless he get another operational Navy destroyer. Now, pause and think about that for a second. A top military commander sent an official notification up the chain, right? Up the chain. And you mean to tell me that's how the system is supposed to work as we know it, as I would, if you tell me, yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. You document your concerns, you send them to your superiors, you follow protocol, but somehow that internal notification ended up in news reports. Somebody leaked it. Somebody took a classified or sensitive internal document and handed it to journalists. Why? What was the goal there? Was it to inform the public, or was it to create pressure on the commander in chief? And here's where it gets even more telling. Word also leaked that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, privately warned the Pentagon that the munition stockpile is dangerously low. Now, I want to be clear about something. I am not questioning whether our stockpiles need attention. That's a legitimate national security discussion that should happen through proper oversight channels in Congress and through the chain of command. What I'm questioning is the method. Think about it like this. If you work at a company and you disagree with the CEO's strategy, you have options. You can take it to the boss, or you can take it to the board. You can write a formal memo. You can quit and speak publicly on your way out. But you don't get to take the company's confidential financial data and email it to a reporter at a news outlet that has been hostile to the CEO for years and call yourself a hero. All right? You just don't do that. I mean, am I missing something here? Let me know in the comments. You just don't do that. And that's not whistleblowing. That's basically insubordination at best and potentially a crime at worst. And that's the part nobody in the mainstream liberal media wants to talk about. They love the story. They love the headlines, as you can see. America's missiles are running out. Panic at the Pentagon. Generals turn on Trump. But they don't want to ask the follow-up question. Who broke the law to give you that story? Who violated their oath to leak classified information to manufacture a political narrative? Right? Now, let me stop right there and restate what's actually at stake because the headlines are designed to confuse you. The story CNN, right? Going back to CNN, the story CNN and other outlets want you to focus on is that America is weak, that Trump's policy have left us vulnerable, that the generals are so scared they're running to the press. But that's not the story. The story is that unelected career officials inside the Pentagon decided they know better than American people who elected a president. And instead of following the lawful process to raise their concerns, they run around, they bypassed the chain of command, and they took information that the enemy would love to have, exact stockpile numbers, operational limitations, readiness gaps, and they handed it to news operations. All right? They handed it to news operations. So when you look at that, right? Do you understand how dangerous that is? You are telling potential adversaries exactly where our weaknesses are, and you are telling them we have X number of interceptors left, and you're telling them our commanders feel stretched thin, and you're giving them a roadmap, and you're doing it because you don't like the president. That's not patriotism. That's actually sabotage. All right? I'm calling it what it is because you have all these outlets saying these things. Now, let me ask you a question, family. If a Democratic president was in the White House and Republican generals were leaking classified information to Fox News to undermine his foreign policy, would CNN be celebrating those leakers as heroes? Would the Washington Post run glowing profiles about the brave whistleblowers who risk everything to tell the truth? You already know the answer. They would be demanding investigations. They would be calling for prosecution. They would be writing editorials about the erosion of democratic norms and the danger of the deep state. And they would be right to do it because this isn't about left or right. This is about whether the military serves the Constitution or whether the military serves itself. And the United States military is supposed to be apolitical. That's not just a nice idea. That's a structural requirement of how a republic works. The military answers to civilian leadership. Civilian leadership answers to the voters. That's the chain. When generals start leaking classified information, generals, right? Because they disagree with policy, they are breaking that chain. And they are inserting themselves into the political process in the most dangerous way possible. They are using their access to secrets as a weapon against the elected commander in chief. And the media is happy to be the weapon. Let's be real for a second. CNN didn't accidentally stumble into this story. These leaks were cultivated. Reporters have sources inside the Pentagon who feed them information. Those sources know exactly what they're doing. They know that a story about depleted missiles will create panic. When don't they create panic? They know it will put pressure on Trump, and they know it will make him look reckless or weak or both. And let's be honest, us Americans, we can be very impatient and can stomach the thing of war, right? And that's what it is. That's the goal, right? To make Trump look reckless, weak or both. And the reporters know it too, but instead of asking whether the information they're receiving is classified, instead of asking whether the person giving it to them is breaking the law, they publish it. They run the Chiron. They get the ratings and nobody asks the obvious question. Where does this come from? Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth went on television and said the report was false. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether the numbers in the CNN report are accurate or not. I don't have access to that data, and neither do you. But I can tell you this. If the numbers were false and someone inside the Pentagon fed false information to the press to create a false narrative, and that's arguably worse. And if you look at these articles, right, we talked about the general. We talked about the 80% of THAAD interceptors that CNN created, right? And then you have individuals saying there are reports that China and Russia will be exempt from paying fees. This is the most humiliating defeat in U.S. history. right? Iran controls the Strait when we know that's not true. All right. Iran has the ability to intervene in waterway. How can they when they don't? Their military is demolished, obliterated. What do they have besides creating chaos and being the terrorists that they are, that you can't negotiate with, even though our president is trying to be diplomatic as possible, right? Then you look at this: the U.S. and Iran, the U.S., Iran, and Oman are closing in on an interim agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, with the U.S. aiming for a Wednesday announcement. This is all pressure. Reuters, right? U.S. has used virtually all of its long-range precision missiles during Iran war. Iran's FM Spox, Esmail Bogahay on the mediators. Pakistan is the mediator for discussion related to Iran and the United States. And Qatar also provides assistance. We have friendly relations with China, and China shares our concerns about the escalation of U.S. confrontational behavior and is worried about insecurity in the region. Again, what is this? Recklessness they're trying to portray our commander in chief as. Reckless and out of control. Our Chinese friends are using their efforts to prevent the escalation of the situation, but adding a new mediator is not correct. All right, let's go. Let's go to this one. All right. Exclusive: U.S. Army has depleted much of its long-range land-based missiles during Iran war. Sources: Reuters, citing sources. Even though we know that this Reuters journal company that I just highlighted, they work with China and doing journalistic work. Interesting. Getting paid by who? The DNC? So, just asking questions. Let me know your thoughts. Well, reports that the U.S. has used virtually all of its long-range Addisons and missiles during the 5-month war with Iran, raising concerns about readiness for future conflicts. The report also says Patriot, THAAD, and Tomahawk stockpiles have been significantly reduced. You see all of this fear, right? This is all fear, the necessary evil. And this is ultimately the agreement that emerges. It may be the least bad option available to Trump administration under current situations, especially given its clear desire to avoid another round of military escalation. The administration has gradually narrowed its own choices, leaving itself with fewer attractive options. And now, to end the confrontation, the administration will be forced to lift the maritime blockade and restoring the sanctions waiver that allowed Iranian oil exports. But I thought Iran controlled the Strait of Hormuz. So how are we lifting the blockade? Contradiction. That reality has shaped the negotiations from the beginning. With the necessary caution, the current trajectory appears to point more toward de-escalation than further escalation, a result that will likely frustrate many in Israel while reassuring most Gulf states whose top priority remains regional stability. From day one, it was clear that restoring the Strait of Hormuz to its pre-crisis status would have required either regime change in Iran or a sustained military effort to impose control over the waterway. Neither option was politically or strategically acceptable to Washington. Basically, we were too weak enough as the United States of America to control the Strait of Hormuz. So we are basically weakening and we are basically giving up. That's just basically the saying. Sometimes the least desirable option is the only realistic one. Look at all of this, man. Most anti-treasonous things you can do, and it really shows the true colors of who really supports the United States of America, who really stands for, who's a true patriot. Because this is cowardly. Golf courses issue concerns about a shortage of air defense systems, right? The SOGPK debunking. A senior Israeli official told N12 that Trump wants the deal at any cost. Look at all of this, man. Look at all of this. The request from this is CNN, mainstream liberal media. The request from a senior officer at the U.S. military command carrying out President Trump's war with Iran came in the email. We need ideas. We are looking for new, creative, unconventional ways to pressure and punish Iran. Basically, like we don't have no options. Right? So when you see all of this stuff, breaking U.S. CENTCOM sent an email to a broad group of military analysts last week saying we are looking for a new, creative, unconventional way to pressure and punish Iran because we need ideas, per CNN. A source close to CENTCOM says CENTCOM is looking at everything, acknowledging its needs to reevaluate the strategy. The crowdsourcing style query, which military officials said was unusual over email, is one sign of the limit and potentially palatable options available to Trump to force Iran to a deal on his terms. Right? Yesterday, Lieutenant Lehi met with Kuwait Armed Forces Chief of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Khalid El Sharon, to discuss shared defense and reaffirm U.S. commitment to Kuwait. The meeting reinforced the enduring U.S.-Kuwait partnership and our shared commitment to regional security and stability. And this one, Iran has forced U.S. forces to withdraw from Kuwait and Bahrain following weeks of constrained Iranian missile attacks, pushing the U.S. to reposition them further afield to Jordan, Israel, and beyond. After 6 months of war with Trump, Iran has seized the initiative so that the U.S. is increasingly fighting at a pace set by Tehran. So you're seeing all these articles, right? When you look at this, they manufactured a lie using the credibility of the United States military to sell it. And if the numbers were true, then someone leaked classified readiness data to basically the enemy's benefit during a time of active conflict. Either way, somebody inside the Pentagon did something they should have not done. And the media is not asking about it because the media benefits from it, as you can see. And think about how the system is supposed to work. If a general believes we have a readiness problem, he writes a memo. The memo goes up the chain. It reaches the Secretary of Defense. It reaches the president. Then the president and his team make a decision. Maybe they ask Congress for more funding. Maybe they adjust strategy. Maybe they prioritize certain theaters. That's how it works in a functional system. I'm just telling you how it works overall. That's the actual process. But when a general or someone on his staff leaks that memo to CNN before the president has even had a chance to respond, they are not solving the problem. They're creating a political crisis, and they are forcing the president's hand, and they are using the media as a weapon of bureaucratic warfare, and that is a dangerous precedent no matter who is in office. Now, to be fair, I can already hear what some people would say in response. They would say these leaks are patriotic because they expose a genuine readiness crisis. They would say the generals have a duty to inform the public when the commander-in-chief is making decisions that put the country at risk. They would say that without these leaks, we would never know the truth about our military capabilities. And look, okay, I get what you're saying. I do. But if you genuinely believe that lives are at risk because of a policy decision, I can see why you would feel compelled to speak out. But here's the problem with that logic. It assumes that the leaker's judgment is superior to the system. And it assumes that an anonymous general or unnamed Pentagon official knows better than the president, better than Congress, better than the chain of command that has been in place since the founding of the republic, founding fathers. And once you accept that premise, there is no limit to it. Every official who disagrees with any policy can justify leaking. Every bureaucrat who loses an internal debate can go to the press. It's already bad enough that Obama opened the doorway for basically the press to be able to spew this type of rhetoric going against our country in a time of war. See, there was a time where we were at war. Journalists cannot speak of this anti-United States rhetoric or anti-patriotic rhetoric. But see, Obama changed things and revamped it in a way where you can speak and do journalistic work on the behalf of both countries. And because it's a time of war, you're able to speak on your own perspective of it. But they opened the doorway to treason. And now you see my point on the screen in regards to President Obama when it came to this Smith-Mundt Act, when it comes to seeing how much of propaganda is basically spread through the mainstream liberal media. And when it comes to a time of war, and which I'm demonstrating now, how propaganda is used on its own citizens in regards of us and us as Americans, which is why I do the work that I do today, doing these videos, all right, to bring you the truth. Because when you look at this on the screen, right, it pisses me off. It's disrespectful, it's treasonous, and open up the doorway to basically spread misinformation and the government to spread propaganda to its own citizens. That's why I feel as though we have the most transparent administration in history in this day and age. So now get it back to what I'm saying. Every official who disagrees with any policy could just justify leaking. And this can justify leaking, as you see on the screen where President Obama. That's why I mentioned them. So every bureaucrat who loses an internal debate can go to the press. The chain of command becomes meaningless. Civilian control of the military becomes a joke. And the media becomes the shadow government deciding what information the public gets to see based on what serves their preferred political outcome. That's not democracy. That's rule by leak, and it's dangerous. So let me bring it back to what matters, because I need you to understand the stakes here. This isn't a story about missile counts. It's not even really a story about Trump. It's a story about whether the United States military answers to the American people through their elected leaders, or rather answers to itself through anonymous leaks to friendly journalists. That's the question. If you're not asking that question, you're being played. The media wants you to be outraged about the missiles. They want you to be scared about readiness. They want you to blame the president. But the real outrage is that someone inside the Pentagon decided they were above the law. And instead of reporting on that crime, the media participated in it. So where does this leave us, family? We got a situation where the most powerful military in the world has career officials who believe they can override the results of an election using classified information. And we got a media that is more happy to be the delivery system for that information because it serves their narrative. And we got a public that is being fed a story designed to make them lose confidence in their own government. Now, I want to ask you something. Do you think these leaks should be investigated? Do you think the Department of Justice should find out who took classified readiness data and handed it to CNN? And I want to hear from you in the comments. Let me know, let me know what you think, honestly. Hit the comment section and tell me your thoughts, family. And let's talk about what the Bible says about this, because I think this applies directly. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 17 says, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examine him. And that's exactly what's happening here. The media ran with the story first. They ran the Chiron, right? They gave you the panic. They made it seem like the generals were right and the president was wrong and the country was in danger, and they stated their case first. And it seemed right. It seemed alarming. And it seemed like we needed to do something. The same thing you're seeing now with COVID and Dr. Fauci. As they ran the committee, and the vote has basically allowed to basically bypass the Senate and things be turned over to the Department of Justice. Not only did they do that, but they also gave the COVID phone that Dr. Fauci was using during COVID time to be handed over to the Department of Justice as well. Now, yeah, he might get $100,000 fine and maybe a year in prison. But, that speaks for itself, not to get off topic. But nobody has examined the other side, right? With this propaganda, from the media and CNNs and the ABCs and MS Nouns, MSNBC, formerly known as the Dr. Fauci's, and nobody has asked who leaked. Nobody has investigated whether the numbers were accurate or whether they were leaked to manufacture a crisis. Well, in Dr. Fauci's case, he ignored and censored other doctors, right? Because he was so busy worrying about making sure with his wife, who runs the FDA, to authorize vaccines to prop him and his wife up to be rich while American lives are gone. Americans are dying. So the one who states his case first seems right. We had individuals 6 foot away wearing masks, taking 3 shots of the COVID vaccine. Said they weren't going to get the vaccine, end up getting the vaccine, and some end up dying because they couldn't just weather the backlash of it all, side effects, and leading to more extreme things. And my heart goes out to those families. But eventually the other side comes, right? And that's where the truth comes out. And here's the life wisdom for those who may not connect with the scripture. When someone gives you information, always ask where it came from before you decide what to think about it. A lot of people take talking points, right? And then they just run with it. Don't do that. That's true in news. That's true in arguments. That's true in life. The source matters as much as the message. If someone hands you a story and says, trust me, don't trust them. Ask who told them. Ask why they told them that. And also let them substantiate their point. The same way I just did through these articles of fear and fear mongering. Ask what they wanted you to do with that information. Because 9 times out of 10, the person leaking the story has an agenda, as you can see here as my example, politically. And your job is to figure out what it is before you let them use you to accomplish it. So here's my final word, family. This is bigger than one president. This is bigger than one party. And this is about whether the United States military remains under civilian control or whether it becomes another political actor using secrets as weapons. If we let this slide, it will happen again. And the next time, it might not be against a president you voted for. Real talk. If you got something out of this video, do me a favor, hit the like button, share this with somebody who needs to hear this. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And thank God our president. And I pray for this administration, the Trump administration. He has safe. I heard about the helicopter incident and a passenger plane, being close by. But thank goodness everybody's safe. And we got to keep praying for our president. He is our president. Whether you like him or not, he's our president. Out of respect for the position, it's a tough and the most powerful position in the land. And he's doing so many things at once. Pray for this administration. Pray for all of our worldly leaders to do the right thing, right? And serve the people and not themselves righteously. And turn this thing around and keep our country as strong for the next generation and generations to come. Turn on your post notifications so you never miss an upload. Remember, family, spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate. I'll catch you next one. Peace.